So, day 3 of the Coney Barrett confirmation hearings to the Supreme Court just wrapped up. It was a little bit of a shorter day than day 2, but I still have quite a few thoughts, so sit back, relax, enjoy. And after you get done with this episode or this video, make sure to check back in on my pre-hearings video to see if I got anything right, and also check out my day 1 and day 2 takeaways that I had from watching the hearings if you're interested. And I will also be doing a video tomorrow after day 4, which appears to be the only day where there's going to be witnesses. So that from what Senator Graham, who is the chairperson or the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is the one that is doing the hearings, said there will be 4 people in support of the nomination and 4 people against. And from what he said, there'll also be senators who will be able to, from what I understand, go back and forth with each other. So I think that should be interesting as well. So we will get into that right now. This was day 2 of questioning for the actual nominee after 1 day of opening statements and 2 days of, and yesterday of questions for her. So anyways, I will get into my thoughts now. So Senator Feinstein is the first one I want to start with. One, like I've been saying a million times on this channel, she's one of my senators because I live in California. And she actually surprised me by actually giving a compliment or showing that this her impressed feelings towards Amy Coney Barrett, who is the nominee. And she said that in response to Amy Coney Barrett's ability to give detailed explanations, definitions, clarifications regarding any questions or any legal terms she wanted, that the senators wanted clarification on regarding the nomination. And I'm honestly glad to see one of my senators, who I actually disagree with most of the time, feel the way I feel about this nominee, meaning that she's very impressive no matter what you believe or how you feel about her philosophy. And I'm happy that Senator Feinstein was openly expressing this during these hearings, and it was a breath of fresh air, and I thank her for doing that, even though I disagree with her a lot of the time. So I think it's refreshing to see that, and it just shows the caliber of this nominee, to the fact, and I'll touch on this later, to the fact that there's very few things you can find wrong with this person. And a couple Republican senators mentioned that the only thing they can find wrong with this nominee is picking apart Justice Scalia, who was a mentor of this nominee, picking apart what he says and trying to put it on her, and that is not going to bring anything to the table as far as anything bad for this nominee. So that was very interesting. Then my the second senator to go, or one right after Feinstein, was Senator Leahy, who I find him very difficult to listen to, and I think it is very ineffective, and this is something I try to work on too. It is very ineffective to not be well spoken in the sense that doing the basics, meaning if you have notes written down, it's very ineffective if you can't even read your notes, or you can't even string a sentence together, or you're disjointed in what you're saying, or I don't know. There's just something about him just seems like he's very, maybe it's his age, maybe something wrong with him, I don't know, but he is not very effective in his job because he can barely even get a point across at all. So I thought that was very interesting. And he touched on the voter rolls being purged being purged, basically trying to touch on voter suppression. And what's interesting is here in California, there's been lawsuits over the fact that we have not purged our voter rolls often enough, because there's still people who are dead that are getting ballots or that are registered to vote, and it's kind of skewing the statistics. And especially this year, where every registered voter was getting a ballot mailed to them. If you died within the past year and you're still technically a registered voter, but you're not alive, your last residence that's associated with your voter ID or voter account or voter registration is going to get a ballot, even though you're dead. So that's the problem with these voter rolls. And it seems to be mostly the Democrats are trying to paint the picture that voter rolls are being purged and people don't know they're being deregistered. Well, the problem with that too is, yes, voter rolls should be purged if people aren't active in the process, but if you're doing your due diligence by checking your voter registration status or making sure you are registered, then it shouldn't be a problem. And I think really they should be focusing on why people aren't interested in the process and why people aren't voting. And a lot of the times it's because they're turned off by the partisanship between Democrats and Republicans, and people are just sick of the two-party system, me being one of those included, even though I still participate. But it's getting pretty difficult to, if you're an everyday person who has a lot more important things to worry about than following politics and the news, especially if you have a family to feed and you're struggling to even do that. I don't blame people for wanting to just not participate in the system and kind of losing faith in the whole government system in general. So I think the best way to tackle voter suppression and the lack of engagement in the system is to fix the way we go about it and make it more inclusive and more palatable for the average American. So that was one thing I really think was interesting that they touched on. And of course, the answer is obvious to me, but it would take them to kind of look inward for them to find the answer. And we know with certain people in power that egos get involved. Even people I agree with or that are on my side technically, I feel this way about them as well. So we'll leave it at that. Next, we had Ted Cruz from Texas. And to me, I wrote down he's a legend because he is able to humorously hit back at a senator Senator Whitehouse, who cowardly left the room after his remarks so that he wouldn't have to face the backlash or criticism of his hypocrisy about dark money in politics, especially with senators on the other side of the aisle to him. And Ted Cruz is smart because he's able to do that while sticking it to them about dark money on kind of the excess and also the excessive use of the posters and paper by him holding up just like a regular size sheet of paper as far as his little pamphlet goes. And also exposing Senator Whitehouse for his role in dark money politics for using or basically influencing judges on certain ethics committees is what Ted Cruz said, by using money from agenda-emphasized organizations with to accomplish what he was actually accusing or trying to allude to the fact that may be happening in this case, or trying to get Coney Barrett to admit to something that's clearly not true. And this to me highlighted exactly why checks and balances are essential to our society, and a supermajority can be dangerous in many cases if it doesn't go unchecked. So that's why I'm so happy about Coney Barrett, is because she seems to be inching towards or moving the court towards what it should be, which is a check and balance on both the legislative branch and the executive branch, and serving a different role than those two political branches. And that has been a highlight of these confirmation hearings. Now, it appears, speaking of political branches, that those in opposition of this nominee today seemed a little defeated, I will admit. And to me, it seems to be the result of Coney Barrett coming across as completely unshakable. I mean, she did not fall for, from what I've seen, one trap trying to be set by the Democrats or people opposing her nomination. And even the people in support of her nomination were asking really tough questions, but she still was able to navigate the landmines they were setting out for her. And doing it without notes, doing it without any counsel or any help, really, and doing it without losing a beat in pretty much every case. And when she did take a beat to kind of get herself together, she was being very careful not to compromise herself and not to, what should I say? Something about her oath. The word I'm trying to think of is not to abandon or break her oath of office or her oath as a judge already. So I thought that was very, very impressive. And then we got to Ben Sasse, who is the senator from Nebraska, who has been actually one of my favorite people on this, and he's a very good speaker, and I'm pleasantly surprised by a lot of these senators who I had not really heard speak for long periods of time before, and he was able to kind of lighten the mood with current events, or tying current events related to baseball and the playoffs to kind of the task at hand in the Senate, bringing it back to the whole judge thing, that judges are supposed to be umpires calling balls and strikes, and that I think it was a welcome thing to kind of shed some lighthearted yet educational moments in this, especially considering that this hearing or these hearings are in a time in the world that we kind of need a little bit of a laugh or a little chuckle, and I think it just showed that some people just need to take a chill pill, learn to laugh kind of as a means of healing and dealing with kind of these difficult times that we are in and dealing with, and while still being able to kind of tackle those serious issues. But we can do it in a way that is more palatable, like I've been saying, and in a way that kind of gives us a little relief from the heavy times that we are in. That kind of led into Senator Coons, who was kind of the opposite, in my opinion, actually. And it was interesting because he was talking and whatnot, and then someone was putting a poster board behind him with a quote on it, and he was actually reading the quote from his binder of notes. And then when he posed a question to Amy Coney Barrett, she referenced back to the quote by pointing at the poster board behind him, and he kind of was confused. He's like, is there a poster board behind me? And this, to me, supports the idea that some of these senators don't really know what's going on, and they appear to kind of be figureheads or puppets of whoever's controlling them, because he didn't even know that there was a poster board being put behind him that has a quote on it that he is reading from his notes. I'll just leave that at that. Anyways, let's go into Josh Hawley, who is actually one of my favorite senators as well, even though I have some interesting suspicions on him, but I'll just leave that kind of out for now. But he touched on actually the lockdown ruling that Judge Coney Barrett actually joined on the decision on this in Illinois courts regarding the Illinois GOP and the governor kind of telling them they can't gather or whatnot, in short. And she actually elaborated on the reason, and this is actually people who are supportive of her nomination and support President Trump, but were concerned about her nomination because of this ruling. I thought she gave the perfect answer, and the thing that would really ease other people's minds, and especially ease my mind, because this is actually one of my concerns that I mentioned in day one, or was it yesterday, about something I can touch on in another video, but I'm glad it came up. So basically she said, it appears that she's in favor of lockdowns because of this decision, but she said because of the way the Illinois Republican Party argued their case by trying to put all like the First Amendment parts, all 5 parts, meaning press, religion, speech, assembly, and protest is what I think the 5 were, in the same umbrella, that was what led to them not getting their way, if you will. They put their the pressure of whatever they were trying to do under the free speech, when it was really the freedom, or under the freedom of religion, but it was really freedom of speech, because it had to do with religious people getting to gather but not protest if not. So that was kind of, I guess, the problem with that case, is they were kind of arguing for freedom of religion with a case that should have been freedom of speech, from what I'm understanding. And so she was trying to explain that the reason she basically upheld a lockdown order was because under the law, you have to argue for one of those parts of the First Amendment because they're separated out for a reason. So I thought that was interesting. And actually, although I don't agree with the lockdown orders, and I've been very critical of them from the beginning for a lot of different reasons, I am very happy to know that she is being fair in her judgments and her decisions. So I thought that was very interesting. And then I have a few quick notes before I go on to the last few parts. But Senator Hirono from Hawaii, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say she sounds like an idiot, and it appears that she might be the dumbest person in Congress, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. A lot of prominent people, one person I saw saying this was Dan Bongino on Parler. I saw someone else post a meme about maybe she's on something. I can't confirm any of that, but listening to her talk, it's just, I don't understand. And I'm not trying to put down or anybody who may have voted for her, but clearly she duped a lot of people, because when she is talking, it's like, is she even comprehending what she's saying? Because like, it's just like one long ramble on sentence that she just keeps adding to. Just like I tend to kind of ramble on sometimes, but at least I have some general like connection between the thoughts or whatnot. And it was just like, I don't know what she was doing, and she never asked a question, like maybe one, and she just kept going. It's like, I don't understand. So anyways, that was my comment on her, and I touched on that yesterday too. And then actually one of my favorite senators to go is Joni Ernst. from Iowa, and she hits the nail on the head with what she talked about today regarding women's rights. And basically, in a nutshell, she said that the lack of diversity of thought within kind of the women's rights movement actually prevents women from pursuing their dreams, because if you don't have a certain thought process as a woman, you're not accepted in kind of the leftist liberal ideology or community. But that is inherently a danger to women's rights. And I thought that was just perfectly said. You'll have to go find a clip of her saying it, because she said it a lot more eloquently, but I wanted to get the gist of it here. And she's right. I mean, if you're claiming to be in support of women's rights, but whatever your view on women's rights is actually limiting to some women, it doesn't really make sense. So anyways, there's that. And then we get to someone I've been very critical of for a long time, but especially now since they're the VP candidate with Joe Biden, and they're actually one of my other senators, Kamala Harris. I actually thought she was good today, and I'll explain why in a second. So she gave kind of a history lesson on the right to vote, which I actually thought was really great. And she's actually, to me, did a good job of laying out the history of it and the evolution of the right to vote. But I couldn't help but compare what she was saying as far as what voting used to be like for the formerly disenfranchised people from voting. And it is eerily similar to what is happening regarding these lockdown orders by government officials who are elected and even unelected ones, where they set a certain guideline at first, and then when you try to meet that or try to help that or whatnot, and it seems that it's not working well enough, then they change that guideline until it kind of fits what it means to the end, meaning preventing you from having the basic rights that you need or that you deserve to have to do your basic human daily whatever you want to do. And so I thought it was just like the contradiction was glaring in my face, considering what we're going on now, since we're going through now regarding the right to vote and the lockdown orders, how they used to change all the requirements to disenfranchise groups that were kind of challenging the rules. So I thought that was very interesting. And as far as drop boxes for voting, which is something that came up as well in this conversation, my understanding was that the reason for many of the places closing their voting booths or voting locations was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which they were trying to push for the mail-in voting. So I thought it was interesting that she tried to use that as a negative point towards the right to vote, even though she supported this whole mail-in voting thing. Because if you have mail-in voting like they wanted, why would you need as many kind of drop box places if you trust the postal service? So all these different things kind of contradict over the past few months, and it was very clear in this case. And then as far as climate change with Kamala Harris, which she always circles back to in response to California. One, I live in California and I work in California, so I'm pretty aware of what's going on here. And it is clear that Kamala, and a lot of officials who are running the state of California or have a say or represent the California in some way, keep using climate change, or quote-unquote climate change, as the scapegoat for mismanagement of the state. And Amy Coney Barrett is incredible, and actually was able to put Kamala in her place on this, because Kamala was leading her to these questions that were kind of trying to convince her to admit that maybe she doesn't agree with science, or she's not, or have an opinion on climate change or whatever. And Amy Coney Barrett was able to see right through it and not really give in to Kamala Harris. And that kind of ended Kamala's spot in this without getting anywhere, really. So, two more senators I want to talk about is, the one is John Kennedy, who I've mentioned I like very much, but he saved the day again by asking direct questions that Kamala was kind of dancing around. And I think whoever makes the order, I don't know if it's Chairman Graham, but putting John Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, after Kamala Harris is the most genius thing, because they could not be more opposite, even though he kind of references her as his friend. But she kept dancing around the questions that Kennedy asked to kind of trap ACB, as I call her, Amy Coney Barrett. which of course she didn't fall for. But it was funny because he asked her if she, he kind of did the same thing Kamala did, but the final question, which was supposed to be like the serious one, was asking her if she liked or supported the lives of puppies, or like fluffy puppies or whatever. And it was kind of funny because everyone laughed. And Amy Coney Barrett said yes. And then she said, I will add my support for the lives of chinchillas because her daughter has a chinchilla. So I thought that was humorous. And I like when people show a little bit of sense of humor, like I mentioned earlier in this video. So I thought that was a really good moment, especially as they got towards the end of the day. And then I have just one more note about Senator Blackburn, who was the last senator to really have their time before a little bit of banter at the end of the day before they wrapped up. And I really appreciated Senator Blackburn from Tennessee, who, as I mentioned in my first video before the hearing started, is the senator that Taylor Swift, the singer, called Trump in a wig because Taylor endorsed Senator Blackburn's opponent. And Senator Blackburn hit back at Kamala on climate change, the rhetoric she was trying to impose on the committee and the American people watching, and said exactly what I said, which is that the reason California is having really bad wildfires is because the mismanagement of forests by the people in charge of the state. And I am really appreciative of Senator Blackburn for checking Kamala Harris on this, because I just think it's sad that a senator from across the country, even across the Mississippi River, is being more honest and more upfront and has a better pulse, at least willing to admit that there's a better pulse and what's really happening on what's happening in the state of California. And she also called out the condescending nature of a lot of the women senators on the other side of the aisle, meaning Democrats, and I appreciated that as well, because a few of those senators are my senators, and I didn't appreciate the way they kind of were treating this nominee who I support. So I'm going to wrap up there. I want to thank you for watching the 3 days so far of my kind of thoughts on the hearings, and I want to know what you think in the comment section down below, whether you're on Rumble or you're on YouTube or you share this on Parler. Make sure to tag me so we can chat there as well. And before you leave, make sure if you are on YouTube, subscribe to this channel, turn on post notifications by ringing the bell if you have not already, give this video a thumbs up so more people see it, and if you're on Rumble, subscribe to my Rumble channel as well and give this video a rumble, which is kind of the equivalent of a like, and leave a comment there as well. So I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching again, and talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.